During the Great Depression, ordinary people became wealthy, not through luck, not through inheritance, by acquiring 10 specific assets. While others starved, they built wealth. The assets are still available today. This is the paradox that most people don't understand. Economic collapse is universally framed as catastrophe. And it was catastrophe for most people. Millions lost homes. Millions lost jobs. Millions starved. But simultaneously, ordinary people were becoming wealthy, not despite the Depression, because of it. The Depression created unprecedented opportunities for people who understood what creates wealth. When assets collapsed in price, ordinary people with modest savings could acquire them cheaply. When assets had intrinsic value independent of the economic system, those assets became more valuable as the system failed. When assets produced resources or income, those assets enabled survival and wealth accumulation. Most people didn't understand this. Most people were destroyed. But some understood. Some saw opportunities. Some acquired assets systematically. Those ordinary people became wealthy, not millionaires through speculation. Wealthy through systematic asset accumulation. The Depression lasted roughly a decade. 10 years of opportunity. Ordinary people who seized that opportunity became wealthy. The question is, why did most people miss the opportunity? And more importantly, what assets created that wealth? What were these 10 assets? And why did they create wealth during the worst economic period in history? Businesses failed during the Depression. They sold equipment for next to nothing. Ordinary people bought tools, machinery, farming equipment, construction equipment at bankruptcy prices. Those tools enabled them to generate income. The mechanism is straightforward. During prosperity, businesses are numerous and operating. They own equipment. During collapse, businesses fail. They can't make payments. They can't service debt. They liquidate assets to raise cash. Liquidation sales happen at bankruptcy auctions. Equipment that costs thousands of dollars sells for hundreds. Equipment that costs hundreds sells for tens of dollars. The prices are catastrophic for the business owners. But there are opportunities for ordinary people with modest savings. An ordinary person with $1,000 in savings could acquire thousands of dollars worth of functional equipment. A person with $500 could acquire more equipment than they could use. Farm equipment exemplifies this pattern. Before the Depression, a plow cost $100, a significant investment for a farmer. During the Depression, farmers failed and liquidated. Plows sold for $10 at auction. Ordinary people could buy plows, harrows, seed drills, other farming equipment for pennies on the dollar. Manufacturing equipment followed the same pattern. Lathes, presses, drills, machinery sold for a fraction of cost. Construction equipment was liquidated. Saws, hammers, scaffolding, tools sold cheaply. The equipment was functional. The machinery worked. The tools were durable. A saw bought for $2 at bankruptcy auction cut wood just as effectively as when it cost $20 new. The equipment maintained value. When economic activity resumed, the equipment was still valuable. It still enabled work. Those who acquired tools could generate income immediately. A person with carpentry tools could offer carpentry services. A person with farming equipment could farm. A person with mechanical tools could repair equipment. Work was available because everything needed repair or rebuilding after the Depression. Demand for services was high. Equipment owners could charge for their work. They generated income from the services they provided using acquired equipment. Equipment owners became wealthy through services. A person who acquired $10,000 worth of construction equipment for $1,000 could charge for construction work. The income from that work was pure profit because the equipment was acquired so cheaply. Over years, the income accumulated. The equipment owner became wealthy. Tools enable work. But you need resources to work with. Asset 3 is what sustains productivity. Land with water access was essential. Ordinary people bought agricultural land with wells or river access. They could produce food and trade surplus. Those with water-rich land became wealthy. The mechanism is that water determines survival during collapse. When supply chains break, food must be produced locally. When food production is required, water is essential. Agricultural land without water is useless during collapse. Agricultural land with water access is invaluable. During the Depression, land prices collapsed. Agricultural land that cost $100 per acre fell to $10 per acre. Land that would normally require substantial capital became affordable to ordinary people. But not all land was equally valuable. Land with water access commanded premium even at depressed prices. A well on property was worth more than property without water. River access was worth more than landlocked property. Ordinary people recognized this. They prioritized purchasing land with water access. Even at Depression prices, water-rich land was more expensive than dry land. But ordinary people understood the difference. They stretched their modest savings to acquire water-rich land. Water enabled food production. Land with water could grow crops. Wells provided water for irrigation. Rivers provided water for livestock. Water-rich land could produce food even during economic collapse. When supply chains broke and stores had no food, water-rich land could sustain families. Surplus food could be traded. A person who produced 50 pounds of vegetables could trade some for other goods. A person who raised livestock with water access could trade meat, milk, eggs. The surplus became tradable commodity. Water-rich land appreciated most. After the Depression, economic activity resumed. Food production became valuable again. Land that could produce food was premium. Water-rich land that had been depressed appreciated dramatically. Ordinary people who acquired water-rich land at Depression prices saw their investment appreciate 10 to 20 times over decades. Farmers with water access survived the Depression. Those without water access lost farms. The difference was stark. Water-rich land commanded premium post-Depression. Agricultural production became valuable again as economy recovered. Food producers became wealthy through sustained production. Why this mattered is fundamental. Food is essential and valuable. Water is essential and valuable. Production during collapse creates wealth. Land with water appreciated significantly. Productivity created sustainable income. Ordinary people who acquired water-rich agricultural land became wealthy through sustained food production. They had foundation for life. They had resource for trading. They had asset that appreciated. Land and tools are foundation, but you need knowledge to use them effectively. Asset 4 is what enables capability. During the Depression, skills became currency. Carpentry, mechanics, farming, cooking, medical knowledge. Ordinary people developed skills and traded them for income. Those with skills became wealthy. The mechanism is that skills generate income in any economy. During prosperity, skills are valuable but competition is high. During collapse, competition disappears because most people have no skills. Demand for skilled work increases while supply decreases. The price people will pay for skilled work increases dramatically. Practical skills are more valuable than credentials during collapse. A university degree is useless when the economy doesn't value the profession. A carpentry skill is valuable when buildings need repair. A mechanical skill is valuable when equipment needs repair. A farming skill is valuable when food production is essential. A medical skill is valuable when doctors are unavailable. The Depression created demand for services. Everything needed repair. Buildings needed construction. Equipment needed maintenance. Food needed production. Medical care was needed. Skilled people could charge high rates because demand was high and supply was low. A carpenter could charge for every hour of work. A mechanic could charge for every repair. A farmer could trade crops. A medical practitioner could charge for services. Skills compound in value over time. A young person who develops carpentry skills during the Depression can charge for work during the Depression. As the person gains experience, skills improve, rates can increase. By the time economy recovers, the person has years of experience and can charge premium rates. The early years of skill development compound into years of high income. Knowledge is permanent asset. A skill learned can't be unlearned. A person who learns carpentry maintains that skill. A person who learns farming maintains that knowledge. The skill provides income throughout life. Skill-based wealth is sustainable. Income from skills doesn't depend on asset appreciation. It doesn't depend on market conditions. It depends on demand for the skill. As long as people need the work, the skilled person generates income. Historical evidence confirms this pattern. Carpenters made excellent income during recovery. Buildings needed to be constructed and repaired. Carpenters who developed skills during the Depression could charge excellent rates during recovery. Mechanics were highly sought. Equipment needed repair as economy recovered. Mechanics became wealthy from repair work. Farmers with knowledge thrived. Those with farming skills produced food and traded surplus. Medical practitioners became wealthy. Those with medical knowledge provided care that was unavailable elsewhere. Skilled workers recovered faster than professionals with degrees. Why this mattered is that skills can't be devalued or seized. A government can't devalue your carpentry skill. It can't seize your mechanical knowledge. Skills generate immediate income. You can work and generate income while other systems are broken. Skills are portable. You can practice your skill anywhere. Skills create independence. You don't depend on employers or institutions. Skill-based income is reliable. As long as demand exists, skilled people generate income. Skills enable income, but you need community to exchange with. Asset 5 is what creates that network, ordinary people who knew their communities thrived. They traded skills, shared resources, organized mutual aid. Those with strong networks became wealthy while isolated people starved. The mechanism is that community networks enable trade. During collapse, formal currency becomes unreliable. Barter replaces currency. Trade requires trust. You won't trade with a stranger. You trade with people you know. Communities with established relationships could organize barter networks. A carpenter traded work for food from a farmer. A mechanic traded repair work for goods from a storekeeper. A baker traded bread for vegetables from a gardener. The networks were built on relationships that existed before the Depression. Those relationships became valuable during the Depression. Relationships create trust for bartering. You trust someone you know. You won't give someone something valuable unless you trust you'll receive equivalent value in return. Communities where people knew each other could establish trust. They could barter effectively. Mutual aid multiplies resources. When families share resources, resources stretch further. A garden that feeds one family can feed 5 families if vegetables are shared. A pig raised by one family can feed 10 families if meat is distributed. A preserved food store shared with community can sustain more people. Networks provide emotional support. During crisis, psychological support is essential. Communities that maintained relationships provided emotional support. People didn't face crisis alone. They faced it together. Social capital survives collapse. Financial capital becomes worthless. Physical assets can be seized, but relationships survive. Community wealth is sustainable. It regenerates through continued interaction. Networks compound in value. The more people you know, the more opportunities appear. The stronger relationships you build, the more support you have. Historical evidence confirms this. Communities with cooperation survived depression. Those with organized mutual aid networks thrived. Isolated individuals faced starvation. They had no network to support them. Barter networks enabled survival. Communities that organized barter systems exchanged goods and services effectively. Mutual aid created wealth. Communities that organized mutual aid accumulated resources collectively. Communities that organized thrived. Those with leadership and organization survived better than disorganized communities. Why this mattered is fundamental. Survival is collective, not individual. Networks enable resource sharing. Resources available to individual are limited. Resources available to network are multiplied. Community enables specialization. A person can specialize in carpentry if community provides food. A person can specialize in farming if community provides tools. Specialization increases productivity. Relationships create opportunities. Knowing people creates opportunities for trade, work, and cooperation. Networks create resilience. A person facing crisis with network has support. A person facing crisis without network faces devastation. Community enables cooperation. But community needs to sustain itself. Asset 6 is what creates that sustainability. Food was currency during the Depression. Ordinary people who could produce and preserve food became wealthy. They traded food for everything else. Those without food production faced starvation. The mechanism is simple. Food is essential. Everyone needs to eat. When supply chains break, food must be produced locally. When food is scarce, food becomes valuable. People will trade anything for food. A person with food can trade it for tools, shelter, labor, anything else they need. Food is essential and valuable. Every person needs to eat every day. Food is the one universal need that can't be eliminated. During normal times, food is cheap and available. During collapse, food becomes precious. Food can't be printed. Food can't be created from nothing. Food must be produced. Preserved food has long shelf life. Food can be preserved through canning, drying, salting, fermenting. Preserved food remains edible for months or years. A person who preserves food during harvest has food during winter. Production capacity is reliable income. A person who can produce food can generate income through food production. A farmer producing crops can trade surplus. A person raising chickens can trade eggs. A person raising livestock can trade meat. Food production provides reliable income. Food can be traded or sold. During Depression, money became unreliable. Food was reliable. People would trade money, tools, labor for food. A person with food could demand high prices or demand other goods in trade. Food production creates sustainability. Food production doesn't depend on supply chains. It depends on land, water, knowledge. A person who can produce food can sustain themselves. Surplus food becomes tradable good. Production capacity exceeds personal need. Surplus can be traded. A farmer producing 100 pounds of vegetables needs 10 pounds for family. 90 pounds can be traded. Food producers became wealthy through sustained food production. Historical evidence confirms this pattern. Farmers thrived during Depression. Those with agricultural production survived. Those without agriculture faced starvation. Communities with food survived. Those without food died. Food became de facto currency. Food was traded for everything. Preservation knowledge was valuable. People who knew how to preserve food were essential. Food producers accumulated wealth. Those who could produce food accumulated resources through trade. Why this mattered is that food is universal need. Everyone must eat. Food production is reliable. As long as people need to eat, food producers have market. Surplus food has trade value. A farmer with surplus always has tradable good. Food enables negotiating power. A person with food can negotiate for other resources. Food creates security. Food security is foundation of all other security. Food sustains people. But people need to be sustained. Asset 7 is what is that sustainably. Animals were production assets. Chickens laid eggs. Goats produced milk. Pigs produced meat. Ordinary people who owned animals had renewable income. Those without animals had nothing. The mechanism is that animals produce renewable resources continuously. A chicken lays eggs daily. A goat produces milk daily. A cow produces milk daily. The production is automatic. The animal generates resources without additional input beyond basic care. Eggs, milk, and meat are tradable. These animal products are universally desired. During Depression, people needed food. Animal products provided that food. A person with chickens could trade eggs. A person with goats could trade milk. A person with pigs could trade meat. These products were valuable trade goods. Animals reproduce, expanding the asset. A pair of rabbits reproduces rapidly. Goats kid annually. Pigs produce large litters. The herd expands. A person starting with one goat could have 10 goats within years. The asset multiplies. Low maintenance if pastured. Animals don't require expensive care. Pastured animals find their own forage. They require basic shelter and water. They don't require expensive feed. They survive on available vegetation. Animals enable self-sufficiency. A person with animals can survive without external supplies. Animals produce food. They produce milk, eggs, meat. Self-sufficiency through animal production, animal products appreciated. As depression deepened, food became more valuable. Animal products became more valuable. The value of eggs increased. The value of milk increased. The value of meat increased. Livestock owners became wealthy through sustained production and appreciation. Historical evidence confirms this pattern. Rural families with animals thrived. Those with chickens, goats, pigs survived depression. Urban poor without animals struggled. They had no food production. They depended on purchased food. As food became scarce and expensive, urban poor faced starvation. Livestock provided consistent income. Animal owners could trade products continuously. Animal products were valuable trade goods. People would trade anything for food. Owners of productive animals became wealthy. They had reliable income through animal production. Why this mattered is that animal production is renewable. The asset regenerates continuously. Self-expanding asset through reproduction. The herd grows without additional input. Essential products produced. Food is always needed. Consistent demand for animal products. People always need eggs, milk, meat. Reliable income stream from animal production. Animals produce resources, but you need shelter for animals. Asset 8 is what creates that shelter. Ordinary people who owned homes outright survived. They had shelter with no payments. Those with mortgages lost everything. Property ownership without debt became the foundation of wealth. The mechanism is that shelter is essential and expensive. Everyone needs shelter. Shelter is one of the 3 basic needs. Shelter is expensive. A person must pay for shelter whether through mortgage or rent. During depression, income disappeared. Mortgages continued. Rent payments continued. People couldn't afford payments. They lost shelter. But people who owned property outright had no payments. They kept shelter. Owned property equals no payments during crisis. A person who owned a home had shelter with no monthly obligation. They could survive without income. They had foundation for life. Mortgaged property leads to foreclosure. Banks foreclosed on properties when owners couldn't make payments. Millions of people lost homes. They had no shelter. They faced homelessness. Property provides security. A person with shelter can focus on other survival needs. A person without shelter is consumed by the crisis of finding shelter. Property can house extended family. During depression, families doubled and tripled up. Multiple generations lived in one home. Extended family sharing costs meant costs were distributed. Multiple people contributing meant more resources. Property becomes more valuable after crisis. Depression eventually ended. Economy recovered. Property that was worthless during depression appreciated as economy recovered. Ordinary people who owned property during depression owned valuable property as economy recovered. Shelter secured people became wealthy. Those who maintained shelter during depression had foundation to build wealth during recovery. Historical evidence confirms this pattern. Those who owned homes survived depression. Families with shelter maintained stability. Those with mortgages lost homes. Foreclosures were widespread. Property ownership enabled survival. Families with owned shelter survived depression. Extended family could live together. Multiple generations in one home meant shared costs and shared resources. Shelter security enabled other wealth building. A person with secure shelter could focus on building wealth. A person without shelter was consumed by crisis. Why this mattered is fundamental. Shelter is foundation of life. Own shelter equals security. No monthly payments means survival possible without income. Property appreciation after crisis. Property that survived depression appreciated as economy recovered. Extended family sharing costs. Multiple generations sharing shelter meant lower per-person costs. Shelter provides foundation. But foundation needs to be defended. Asset 9 is what does that? Resources mean nothing if stolen. Ordinary people who could defend their assets survived. Those without protection lost everything to theft and violence. The mechanism is that resources require protection. During normal times, law enforcement protects property. Police respond to theft. Courts enforce contracts. Property is secure. During collapse, law enforcement disappears. Police don't respond. Courts don't function. Property is unprotected. Resources become targets. Desperate people steal. Organized groups take what they want. Defense prevents theft. A person who can defend property keeps it. A person who can't defend property loses it. Security enables accumulation. You can only accumulate resources if you can protect them. A person who accumulates resources without ability to protect loses them. Community defense is effective. A group can defend against individuals or smaller groups. Communities that organize defensive networks protected resources. Protected resources survive crisis. During depression, communities that could defend their resources kept them. Communities without defense lost resources to theft and violence. Defense capability is asset. The ability to defend is itself valuable. Communities with defensive capability protected community resources. Security-conscious people became wealthy. Those who recognized need for defense and prepared for it survived better. Historical evidence confirms this pattern. Communities with collective defense survived depression. Those that organized neighborhood watches and mutual defense protected resources. Undefended resources were stolen. Communities without defense lost goods to theft. Armed groups dominated unprotected communities. Those without defensive capability were dominated by those with capability. Defense enabled resource preservation. Communities that could defend kept accumulated resources. Security-conscious people accumulated wealth. Those who understood importance of security positioned themselves to defend. Why this mattered is that resources are targeted during crisis. Desperate people steal. Organized groups take what they want. Unprotected wealth is lost. A person with resources but no defense loses them. Defense multiplies security. A defended community is safer than undefended. Protection enables accumulation. You can only safely accumulate if you can protect. Security creates stability. A secure community can focus on building. An insecure community is consumed by defense crisis. Security protects resources. But protection needs knowledge to be effective. Asset 10 is what enables that knowledge. Knowledge is the most valuable asset. Ordinary people who had books, manuals, agricultural guides, medical references became essential. They shared knowledge and became wealthy through that sharing. The mechanism is that knowledge doesn't disappear. Physical assets can be destroyed. Money can be devalued. But knowledge persists. Written knowledge is permanent. A book written in 1920 contains the same knowledge in 1933. Agricultural knowledge in a manual applies regardless of economic conditions. Medical knowledge in a reference book saves lives in any era. Technical knowledge in manuals enables repair and construction in any economy. Knowledge holders became teachers. People who had books and manuals became sources of knowledge. Others came to learn. The knowledge holder could charge for teaching or trade knowledge for other resources. Teachers became wealthy. Those who could teach valuable skills became prosperous. Medical knowledge was particularly valuable. A person with medical reference books could treat illness. During depression, professional doctors were expensive or unavailable. People with medical knowledge and references could provide care. They became wealthy through medical services. Agricultural knowledge was critical. A person with agricultural manuals could teach farming. A person with knowledge of soil, crops, animals could help others produce food. That knowledge was valuable. Technical knowledge was essential. A person with carpentry manuals could learn and teach skills. A person with mechanical references could repair equipment. Technical knowledge enabled work. Historical evidence confirms this pattern. Libraries preserve civilization. Knowledge preserved in books enabled civilization to recover after collapse. Knowledge holders were essential. Those with knowledge became community resources. Teachers were valued and compensated. Communities recognized value of knowledge and compensated teachers. Technical knowledge commanded high prices. People would pay for technical knowledge that enabled them to work. Knowledge sharing created wealth. Those who shared knowledge became wealthy through that sharing. Why this mattered is that knowledge is permanent. It doesn't depreciate. Knowledge enables others. Teaching others creates value for community. Knowledge sharing creates community. Sharing knowledge builds relationships. Knowledge doesn't deplete. Sharing knowledge doesn't reduce your knowledge. Knowledge creates sustainable wealth. Teaching creates ongoing income. These 10 assets created wealth during the Great Depression. And they're the same assets available today. These 10 assets shared common characteristics. They had intrinsic value independent of money. They could be traded. They produce resources. They could be accumulated. That's why they created wealth. The first common characteristic is intrinsic value independent of currency. Land has value because people need shelter and food. Tools have value because people need work done. Food has value because people need to eat. Animals have value because they produce food. Knowledge has value because people need to learn. These assets had value regardless of what currency was doing. When money became worthless, these assets retained value. The second characteristic is productive capacity. These assets create resources. Land produces food. Tools enable work. Animals produce eggs, milk, meat. Knowledge produces income through teaching. These assets don't just sit there. They produce. The third characteristic is tradability. These assets could be traded for other goods. During Depression, barter replaced currency. Assets that could be traded were valuable. All 10 assets were tradable. The fourth characteristic is durability. These assets don't depreciate quickly. Land lasts forever. Tools last decades. Animals reproduce. Knowledge doesn't age. These assets maintain value over time. The fifth characteristic is accumulation potential. These assets expand over time. Land can be consolidated. Tools can be collected. Animals reproduce. Knowledge compounds. These assets grow. The sixth characteristic is independence from systems. These assets don't depend on electricity, internet, or supply chains. Land produces food without systems. Tools work without systems. Animals produce food without systems. Knowledge exists without systems. These assets function when systems fail. Why they created wealth is clear. Ordinary people could acquire them at Depression prices. The Depression made assets cheap. Ordinary people with modest savings could buy expensive assets. Depression prices enabled acquisition. Assets had immediate utility. They could be used immediately. They generated immediate benefit. Assets produced income or resources. Every asset generated something valuable. Assets appreciated as crisis ended. As economy recovered, asset values increased. Ordinary people who acquired assets became wealthy as assets appreciated. The contrast is striking. People with paper assets lost everything. Stocks became worthless. Bonds became worthless. Currency became worthless. People with productive assets thrived. Those with land, tools, animals, knowledge survived and prospered. People with debt lost possessions. Those with mortgages lost homes. Those with loans lost collateral. People with owned assets kept them. Those who owned property outright kept shelter. Those who owned tools kept productive capability. Those who owned animals kept food production. People without assets had nothing. Those without land, tools, animals, knowledge faced starvation. Asset owners became wealthy. Those who systematically acquired productive assets became wealthy. Why this matters today is that same assets are available today. Same mechanism applies today. Depression created opportunities. Collapses create opportunities. Same assets will create wealth. The Great Depression created ordinary millionaires, not through luck, through systematic asset acquisition. The question is, will you make the same choices?